Hey everyone, it's Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com, and do something a little different this week because I wanted to talk about something that has gotten a lot of people's attention. Should you bother booking any 2021 cruises at all? So, of course, what to do while cruise lines are shut down and how many cruises should you book? Boy, it's the big question, right? Some people think you're absolutely insane to book anything until cruises restart, while others, including myself, feel that cruises are eventually going to restart. It's a bit of a game here, but eventually they are. Why put your entire life on hold? Make plans. You can always cancel. The cruise lines are giving their money back. So what's the harm in doing so? But one particular YouTuber posted a video that got a lot of attention from Royal Caribbean blog readers. And this particular YouTuber I have a lot of respect for. He's not the kind of clickbaity YouTube video just to get a couple clicks kind of guy. Good guy. His name is Gary Bembridge, and he does a great job with his videos on his YouTube channel. And he posted a video that said you should forget all your 2021 cruise plans. Now, I have not seen this video. I heard about it. There was a good thread on the Royal Caribbean blog message boards, and it got me thinking, is he right or not? And do I agree with him or not? So in today's video, we're going to break down his video. I'm going to watch it here live, and I'm going to share with all of you my thoughts on whether or not I agree with him or not, what its conclusions are. Because going into this video, and again, I'm going purely based on the title, which is Forget 2021 Cruises, Plan 2022. I would disagree with that. But I am curious why he thinks that. And I'm going to explain also why I think that you should still plan 2021 cruises. But we'll get into all that in just a little bit.
You're about to discover 7 reasons you should be looking at 2022 and not 2021 cruises, including the surprising news that the cruise lines agree with this too. I'm Gary Bembridge, and in this episode of Tips for Travelers, I look at why booking 2022 cruising vacations and avoiding committing to 2021 right now and waiting, no matter how eager you are to go cruising, is your absolute best bet by far. Probably the most compelling reason for focusing booking for 2022 is the cruise lines themselves are actually recommending it. There are a couple of things to note that have developed over the last couple of days and weeks. Firstly, at a recent travel agent virtual cruise showcase arranged by the Cruise Line Association, the lines were telling travel agents to encourage travelers to book itineraries earliest from autumn-winter 2021 and to focus more on 2022 cruises. So why are they doing that? Well, simply because they are much more certain that their advertised cruises will actually be able to run by then.
So this is a good point, and this is again why, he's saying, it's an interesting point. He says, the cruise lines are telling travel agents to focus on 22, but he even says that the cruise lines are telling travel agents to also look at autumn 2021. And I think I know where this is going to go in general, but the idea is that you shouldn't book 2021 cruises, you look at 22, but really what it's about is we're not sure when in 21 cruises will begin, so 22 is more of a sure bet, which is more, hedging your bet more than anything. And again, even by his own admission, they didn't say you shouldn't look at 21. It's just that it's a sure bet for 22. I'll let him go into more detail here in terms of, the wherewithal between 21 and 22. But it is interesting. I wasn't aware of this particular meeting. Of course, Gary, as you might be able to tell from his accent, is from the UK. And, what they do over there in terms of the circles of marketing and travel agent discussions is a little bit different than we see here in North America. However, it is interesting. Of course, they're trying to, talk about where there is. And obviously, any cruise line out there would tell you that we don't know when cruising is going to begin. That's one of the big questions out there. And there is no answer yet as to when that will be the case. And that ambiguity certainly doesn't sit well with many people. And I think that's what they're trying to tell the travel agents here in this example that Gary brought up, is that, if you're sitting there in front of travel agents and the travel agents are going to say, hey, we want to be able to sell your product, but what should we tell our clients? The cruise lines are trying to be a little realistic about it and say, listen, there's a possibility for some point this year, but there's a better possibility for 2022. But I don't take that to mean you should ignore 2021. But I'll let Gary dive into this more. Maybe he'll change my mind as we go into it.
For example, Peter Shanks, now he's the managing director of Silversea Cruises, he was very explicit and said that travel agents should focus on promoting and selling their cruises from the autumn of 2021, and he recommended more early 2022 because they would be confident they would be operating them as planned. Now, this also explains why the cruise lines have been putting 2022 and 2023 itineraries on sale to give us as travelers and, of course, agents further out cruises to focus on.
Now, wait a minute. Let me also stop him right there. Yes, cruise lines have been putting out their 2022 and 2023 itineraries out there for two reasons. Number one, they do it anyway. Regardless of coronavirus, the new itineraries come out exactly around the same time. With Royal Caribbean, they always put out new itineraries around November timeframe and then again in the spring. So this isn't anything special. They're not trying to be like, oh, geez, we've got to get something out there and, we're going to shove some new itineraries out there in order to give someone to book something because 21 is kind of maybe a bust or something. In addition to that, though, there is a little bit of truth to what Gary is saying, and that, listen, they got to get some revenue out of this, right? At the end of the day, they've got to get some money, cash flow coming in, and that helps. But the bottom line is new itineraries coming out for 2022 and 2023 are always going to be coming out around this time of year. That's not a new phenomenon. So I don't go with, this idea that, oh, you should book for 22 because the cruise lines are pushing those itineraries. These itineraries are always out there around the same time. So I'm going to say I don't agree with that one at all. All right, let's keep going.
Secondly, the cruise lines simply don't know when for certain they will be able to resume sailing in 2021. No one really knows. There's no agreed date in North America, nor in major cruise embarkation countries like the UK and Spain. There's no agreement on lifting bans in places like Canada and Australia. Now, there is a process for return to sail in most of these countries, like the US CDC framework for conditional sailing, but there's no clarity or certainty on the dates when cruises will really honestly start up in the UK, in the US, in Spain, Australia, and so on. Thirdly,
he's totally right about that. I mean, that's not, again, I'm sure going to get into this, but everything he said about the ambiguity about not knowing when cruises will resume here in the US, UK, Australia, 100% right. Nobody knows. Spot on, Gary. All right, let's keep going.
Even once they can start sailing, all the lines have been really clear that they'll be staggering their fleet return to service through most of 2021. It will not be one big bang and all the ships come back to service. However, they are still listing and selling cruises right across their fleets from the first date they hope to start the very first ship or ships sailing. So that cruise you may be eyeing for 2021 that currently shows it's running may not be in the end. No one really knows for 2021 yet. Norwegian and Carnival groups, for example, they say they only envisage all their ships being back sailing by autumn 2021. So it's clear that many advertised cruises won't run. Now, others like Fred Olsen Cruises, they're already starting to be much more upfront and much more explicit. They have laid up one of their ships, the Braemar, already until 2022, as this one's used to sail more distant, more fly cruise, more multi-country itineraries. They've cancelled all 2021 cruises for that ship, and they will only bring back ships in 2021 that run no-fly, local departures, they cruise to domestic or ports that are close to the UK.
Okay. He's right about that especially with the big cruise lines, Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Norwegian, they're still selling the cruises that are out there, even though Gary's also 100% right that even when cruises do resume, whenever that is, it's not going to be the entire fleet at once. It's going to be one ship, two ships, maybe three ships starting up at first. And there's no indication yet of, which those will be. I think that's also part of the problem is that because the cruise lines aren't exactly sure which cruise ships and where can sail, still selling the ships for the entire fleet makes sense from that standpoint. But I'm going to put this on cruisers' responsibility. We're sitting here a year after cruise lines have been shut down, right? This doesn't just happen a week ago. And I think there's a little bit of personal responsibility that if you're booking a cruise, whether it is in 21 or 2022 or even 2023, it's your responsibility as a consumer to be as informed as you can. And odds are if you're watching this video, you're totally fine. You are that informed consumer because you're doing what you should be doing. Research, getting to know what's going on there, and making a more informed decision. However, there's a lot of people who don't do that. They just simply book stuff out there. And Gary's right that, we don't know which ships will sail. We don't know when they will sail, but the cruise lines are putting out there. What Fred Olsen Cruises and some other rando small cruise lines that have a very, 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 very small market share are doing, to me, is irrelevant. It does not factor into the big market. And obviously, cruising is more than just mainstream cruise lines. I get that. But for the purposes of obviously what we're doing here at Royal Caribbean Blog as well as I think a lot of people who follow the cruise industry, what the big lines are doing is what drives the market. And I don't pay that much attention to, the Saga cruises, the Fred Olsen cruises, some of these smaller lines that maybe you haven't even heard of until they do something that's significant, like requiring the vaccine or something like that. It's something to keep an eye on, but I don't look at that as an indicator of anything. They're the offshoots. They're the one-offs, the exception to the rule. And I think for most people, and again, I'm talking in general here, for most people, it's the big lines that matter. And for what the big lines are doing is what we should be focusing on going forward. Okay, back to Gary.
Fourthly, it's also worth considering, as you think about timing, that the major cruise groups have been raising cash to enable them to survive without any cruises running through to summer 2021. So that may also be an indication of their thinking. So if you want to plan your vacation time, your budget with maximum certainty, pushing it out to the earliest end of the year, 2021, and even better into 2022 is definitely your best option.
Okay. I agree with him with what he's saying. He's basically saying, if you want to book a cruise and have the best chance of it sailing, and that's your concern, number one concern, want to book a cruise, want to make sure it's going, wait till 2022. That I do agree with. However, I don't take that to believe that you shouldn't book 2021 cruises. Gary said earlier in this video a couple times, and I do agree with him, that there are going to be cruises in 2021. We don't know what they are yet. But to me, the notion that not knowing exactly which ships will sail is indicative of you shouldn't book anything, I don't agree with that. I think you've got to plan your life, and you've got to make plans, and plans change. You got to be okay with that. You can't cry about it when it doesn't happen. But at the same time, I do think it's important to have these plans ahead of time and see where things are going. I have cruises booked in 2021. I'm not booking cruises at the pace I was doing before the whole shutdown, but I still believe there is value in booking cruises in 2021 because eventually it is going to happen. Eventually, ships are going to sail, and I'm not booking, repositioning cruises, transatlantic sailings that I think have a very low likelihood of going. Certainly Caribbean cruises, short Bahama sailings. I'm going in that direction because a lot of signs have shown us that's the direction cruise lines are going to go into. But what Gary is saying here is the idea is, I think he's coming at it for people who are wondering, how do I book a cruise that is actually going to sail or has the best chance of sailing? Certainly, the longer you go out, whether that's 22 or 23 for that matter, that is going to be certainly your best bet because it's the highest likelihood. That doesn't mean 2021 cruises aren't going to happen at all. And that's kind of the issue that I take with it because, again, whether we're talking about summer or fall or winter, I believe there are going to be cruises that will sail. I could be 100% wrong on that later on. We'll have to wait and see on that. But I think sitting on the sidelines or writing off all of this here as we sit here in February of 2021 is a mistake. I think that it's a little too early to know. Think about everything that happened in 2020, a year ago, right? All the things that happened. Now think about, could you go back to February of 2020 and predict half those things that happened in the rest of the year? You can't. I mean, it's crazy. That's life, right? And so I don't think we can sit here with any kind of certainty and say, none of these are going to happen, or the ambiguity of it leads me to believe none of these should happen. So I respectfully disagree with Gary on this one. I don't think that you should give up on 21 here in February. I think there's still a good possibility of sailings occurring later in the year for a variety of reasons. Now, we don't know when, and Gary's right on it. We don't know when, we don't know where, and there's a lot more questions around that, but questions don't necessarily mean that you should just give up on it. Unless you are truly of the opinion, if you're truly of the opinion that I need a dead set, gonna happen, I don't want any more disappointment, Matt, then yes, Gary's right. Push off your cruise until 2022 and book then. Heck, I would even go one step further than Gary in that case, and I would say don't book anything. Wait for cruises to restart and then book cruises as well. That's another possibility.
Don't just take my word for it, the lines are saying it too. It's also, therefore, not a surprise that the lines are making it even easier for you to book cruises in 2022 using your future cruise credit from cancelled trips. So if you have future cruise credit, do not feel pressurized to use it to cruise in 2021, which of course had been the case for quite some time. The cruise lines are allowing you to use your future cruise credit for 2022 cruises, and some, like MSC Cruises, Carnival Cruise Line, for 2023 cruises already. Now, many cruisers, including me for a time, think that the expiry date of our future cruise credit is by when you have to have cruised. Now, this is not always the case, so check really carefully with your line.
So after watching Gary's video, I agree with a lot of what he said. I also disagree with what he said, the conclusions he came to. But the bottom line is what Gary is saying is that not everybody should wait till 2022. What Gary is saying, in my opinion, is that if you're unclear or the idea of the ambiguity, the not knowing of when cruises will restart is bothering you, is gonna bug you. If you don't want to deal with any more cruise cancellations, yes, you should definitely wait for cruises to actually restart. And if you want to book something now, certainly booking a cruise in 2022 is not a bad idea. As you guys know, one of the best strategies you can always do is to book your cruise as early as you can to lock in the best possible price. But I wouldn't look at Gary's video as a sign or an instruction that no one should book cruises in 2021. Rather, I think that there is much more hope in 22. In a lot of cases, the longer we go, the more impact the vaccine can have, new protocols have, and more likely for cruises to restart. I think that Gary brings up some really good points. I don't necessarily agree with his conclusions or what the cruise lines are saying necessarily, but I do think there are some people who are truly upset with the idea of any more canceled cruises. They just can't handle it. They don't want that kind of disappointment. Nobody likes disappointment in life. I get that. And I certainly have had plenty of canceled cruises now, and it doesn't get any easier with each one. That being said, I don't mind booking another cruise because it's kind of like playing a game of roulette, right? You put your chips down on a certain number and you hope the ball gets there. Eventually it will. Statistically speaking, it will eventually get there. And I really believe cruises will eventually restart, and I will be waiting for them. If you're not cool with any more canceled cruises, yes, you should listen to Gary and wait off. However, if you're okay with it and want to roll the dice because you know you're going to get future cruise credits, you know there's going to be refunds issued, you know you have more flexibility in the cancellations, so something Gary talked about as well, what have you got to lose? I mean, plan your life, and if it works out, great, and if not, okay, well, that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. So it's a good video. I recommend you guys all check out Gary's stuff. He's a really, really good guy. And thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments below, do you agree with Gary? Do you agree with me? Or do you agree with both of us? And there's definitely some middle ground there. Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on your notifications so that way YouTube lets you know when we have a brand new video to share. This has been Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com, and we'll talk again real soon.